I bought back the land my father lost. 2 acres of stubborn Texas dirt. Thought I was buying peace. But peace out here comes with paperwork. 3 weeks later, a black SUV stopped at my gate, and a woman with a clipboard told me my home now falls under community jurisdiction. That's when I realized they hadn't come for peace. They'd come for my land. I hadn't been down that road in nearly 20 years. Back then, it was gravel and mesquite, a single-lane stretch where dust hung in the air like old memory. Now it was lined with beige homes, manicured lawns, and a stone monument that read Willow Ridge Estates, where community comes first. Still, when I turned off onto the dirt path that led to my father's old place, something in me settled. The smell of cedar and dry grass hit me like a flashback I didn't ask for. For the first time in years, I felt quiet. The house looked worse than I expected. The porch had sagged nearly a foot. Windows boarded over. Roofline bowed under the weight of time. The front yard was swallowed by thorn brush and wild mesquite. The kind of growth you can't mow, only burn. But I could see the bones. The same way a soldier looks at a ruin and imagines a fort, I could see the outline of what it once was. My father built this house with a hammer, a beer, and too much pride. He didn't believe in credit cards or handouts. He used to say, "Land's only yours as long as you're willing to bleed for it." He bled plenty. And for years, so did I. Just not in the same way. After he died, the property was swallowed by bank paperwork and unpaid taxes. By the time I got out of the hospital in El Paso, long story, not a happy one, the place was gone, foreclosed, until last spring. I found it listed under abandoned rural asset, hidden 3 pages deep on a government auction site. No bidders, no interest, just a parcel number and a price that felt like a challenge. I paid in full. No loans, no partners. Every dollar I'd earned investigating insurance fraud, catching people who burned their own homes for profit, went into buying back the dirt my father had kept clean. When I parked in front of it that first morning, I didn't see rot. I saw a second chance. The door stuck but gave way after one hard shove. The smell of dust and mildew rushed out. Inside, the air was heavy, still. I walked through each room like a ghost with nowhere else to be. The old kitchen window was cracked from a BB gun I fired when I was 10. The wallpaper, pale blue with horses running across the pattern, was still there, faded but hanging on. In the shed out back, under a pile of scrap metal, I found my father's hammer. The handle was split, initials carved deep. J.M. Jack Mercer. I ran my thumb along the groove of those letters until the dirt came off on my skin. Somehow, it felt like a handshake across time. That night, I slept on the floor with the sound of crickets and coyotes drifting through the walls. The air smelled like freedom, rough, imperfect, real. Morning came with work. I cleared the brush first, sweating under the Texas sun until my arms went numb, fixed what was left of the fence, patched holes in the siding, rewired a breaker box the raccoons had claimed as theirs. Every swing of that hammer sounded like memory made solid. By noon, an old pickup rattled down the dirt road. The man behind the wheel wore a straw hat, gray beard, and the kind of eyes that have seen both drought and flood. He rolled down his window. "Didn't think anyone had come back to this patch," he said. "Guess I'm stubborn enough," I told him. He smiled. "Name's Ray, live a mile west. Your old man and I traded feed back in the day. Hard worker, harder head." He handed me a thermos of black coffee. "Watch those HOA folks north of here," he added. "They'll claim air rights if you let them." I laughed. I thought he was joking. By sunset, I'd cleared half the fence line and lit a burn pile that glowed like the end of a long prayer. The smoke curled upward, red and gray against the twilight. I sat on the porch steps, sore, blistered, but proud. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't chasing liars or paperwork. I was building something honest, something mine. I told myself the world couldn't reach me here, that out past the highway and the subdivisions, a man could still live by his own rules. And for a few weeks, I believed that. Until the day the SUV stopped at my gate, and everything I thought I owned was suddenly up for debate. I woke the next morning sore in places I hadn't felt since my 20s. The kind of pain that doesn't complain. It just reminds you you're still alive. Coffee tasted stronger out there, or maybe I just needed it more. Either way, with that old thermos from Ray and a sunrise pulling gold across the pasture, I felt like I was doing something a man ought to do. earning sunrise with sweat. I don't know when this world shifted toward comfort being a goal. I was raised believing comfort was a reward, not a lifestyle. Back then, if you didn't work, you didn't eat. Simple math, honest math. So, I worked. I tore vines off the porch posts, ripped rotten boards out with a crowbar, and pulled a whole wheelbarrow full of nails that time and rust had turned mean. Sawdust, sweat, and memory mixed in the air like some graveyard incense for old days. No crews, no contractors, just a man, his hands, and a stubborn piece of land. That first week, I slept little and worked plenty. Every nail I drove sounded like reclaiming something I thought I'd lost. Every board I straightened felt like setting a bone back in place. The neighbors, the real ones, started to notice. Folks who lived down dusty roads and had more miles on their boots than their trucks. They'd slow down, roll down a window, throw a little chin nod. Respect is quiet in places like this. On the fourth day, the Texas heat came for me the way only Texas can. Sky clear, air sharp, heat settling on your shoulders like punishment for choosing to live here. By noon, I was out behind the house, clearing the worst of the brush near the old fence line, when the shovel struck something solid. At first, I figured it was just another rock. The land out here grows stones the way softer places grow flowers. But when I got down and brushed the dirt away, I found wood. Thick, weathered, burned in places. A crate, old. I dug it out as gentle as my tired arms would allow, knees in the dirt, heartbeat loud in my ears. The hinges had rusted to nothing, so I pried it open with the back of my hammer. Inside was a canteen, a pocket knife, and a folded cloth bundle tied with leather string so dry it crumbled between my fingers. I opened it. Inside sat an old sheriff's badge, star-shaped, tarnished, still proud. Mercer County deputy, barely readable through the years. I blinked, sat back, let the wind fill the silence. My father rarely talked about his own father, but I remember seeing that badge once, far back in a drawer when I was 6 or 7. I'd asked if it was his. He said, "No, that was a man who believed the law still meant something." I didn't understand it then. I think I do now. I sat there a long while, fingers tracing the cool metal. That badge might not mean a thing to the world anymore, but it meant something here, on this land, in this dirt. Something about standing your ground, about not letting other people decide what your life looks like. I wiped it clean as best I could and tucked it into my shirt like a piece of armor. By the time I came back around the front, Ray was parked by the gate again, boots propped out his truck window like he owned the afternoon. "Boy," he called, "you look like you crawled through a chimney and a cattle chute same time." I grinned. "Feels about right." He tossed me a sandwich wrapped in butcher paper. "Figured you don't stop for lunch." I didn't. He knew it. As we ate, Ray stared out over my land, or what would be my land once I whipped it into shape, and he nodded slow. "You keep this up," he said. "They'll notice." "Who?" He took a long sip of whatever was in his thermos, coffee or whiskey, impossible to tell with men his age, and looked toward the distant roofs of Willow Ridge. "Those folks who don't like anything they can't control." I chuckled. "They got enough to worry about over there." Ray didn't laugh, just squinted at me like a man who's seen this movie before. "Son," he murmured, "you don't know these HOA types yet. They'll measure your grass, fine you for your mailbox leaning, and fold their socks by committee if they could." I waved it off. At that moment, it sounded too absurd to ever matter. I wish I'd listened a little harder, because while I was thinking about roofing nails and fence posts, someone across that tree line was thinking about boundaries. And soon enough, they'd come to try and move mine. But that day I was just a man fixing an old ranch, holding a badge my grandfather once earned and a hammer my father once swung. And for a brief, quiet moment, I thought history was something you built on, not something you had to defend. 3 weeks passed before anything strange happened, long enough for me to think maybe Ray had been wrong about those people who can't stand what they can't control. The place was shaping up nice. Fence painted, porch rebuilt, roof sealed tight. I'd even put up a new mailbox. Black, simple, no number. Didn't feel like advertising. Then, one afternoon, I saw the dust trail first. A black SUV turning off the asphalt onto my dirt drive. You ever notice how silence changes when something's not right? It doesn't vanish. It shifts. Birds go quiet. Wind holds its breath. Even the bugs seem to step aside. I stood on the porch, rag in hand, wiping grease from my palms, and watched them roll in. The SUV stopped by the gate. 2 people inside, both in gray. Matching polos with Willow Ridge Community Association, stitched in neat white letters. The driver, a woman, stepped out first. Mid-40s, sharp haircut, shoes that had never met mud. She carried a clipboard like a badge. The man with her was younger, holding a tablet and the kind of smirk that grows in HOA meetings. She waved like we were old friends. "Good morning. Are you the property owner here?" I didn't answer right away. I just leaned on the post. "Depends who's asking." Her smile thinned. "Kyla Driscoll, president of the Willow Ridge Community Association. We're doing standard property updates for integration purposes." "Integration?" I said. "That's some kind of tech merger or something?" "It's a zoning alignment," she replied, voice sweet and cold. "Since your parcel is now fully surrounded by Willow Ridge, it's being included under our jurisdiction." I almost laughed. "Lady, this land's been independent since Clinton was in office. You can't just draw a line and make it yours." She held up the clipboard, tapping a page thick with seals and signatures. "According to the county overlay, your property is now part of the Willow Ridge subdivision boundary. There are standard fees and compliance requirements." The man chimed in, like a student eager to please. "That includes fencing guidelines, lawn standards, and safety assessments for your, shooting range." My jaw tightened. They'd been watching. That meant the drone I'd spotted last week wasn't a coincidence. I took a slow step closer to the fence. "You got some nerve showing up here without calling first." "We left a letter," she said. "Yeah, and I left it unopened, on purpose." She straightened her clipboard, glanced at her partner, and said in that overly patient tone bureaucrats use when they think you're dumb, "You'll need to register your property within 30 days to avoid fines." "Fines," I repeated, "for land I already own, paid for, maintained, improved, without 1 cent of your help." Her smile never broke, but her eyes did that flick, the one that says she's used to people backing down right about now. I didn't. Instead, I reached into my back pocket and pulled out a folded document, the certified deed I'd gotten from the county recorder's office. I held it against the fence wire. "You see that stamp?" I said. "County certified, exempt from any HOA incorporation. Recorded, sealed, and notarized. This ground is outside your reach." The man took a cautious step closer, phone half raised like he wanted a picture. I shook my head once. "Don't." He stopped. Kyla exhaled, lips pursed. "Mr. Mercer, we can work through this civilly. These transitions happen all the time. It's better for everyone if we stay cooperative." "Cooperation's a 2-way road," I said, "and this one ends at my gate." Her eyes hardened. "Refusal to comply may result in escalating penalties." "Ma'am," I said, calm but steady, "the only thing escalating here is your imagination." She blinked, then signaled to the man. He pulled an envelope from his binder and slid it through the fence wire. "Official notice," she said. "Consider yourself informed." They turned back to the SUV. Gravel crunched under their polished shoes. I didn't move until the sound of their tires faded back into the highway hum. Then I picked up the envelope. Heavy paper, embossed crest, legal jargon printed neat as a sermon. Notice of violation and pending review. Willow Ridge Community Association. They'd itemized everything: non-conforming fencing, unauthorized use of firearms, unapproved structural renovations, and my favorite, refusal to comply with membership dues under integration by encirclement. Integration by what now? I stood there on my porch and laughed. Loud, long, maybe a little too hard. But the laughter didn't last, because when the humor drained out, what was left was something else, a pressure building in my chest. I'd seen scams before. I'd hunted them for a living, and this one had all the same fingerprints: official tone, vague authority, and a demand for money dressed up as order. The difference was, this one had come to my gate. I folded the paper, slid it into my pocket, and looked up at the clear Texas sky. If they wanted a fight, they'd get one, but it'd be the kind fought in daylight, with truth, with paper, and with every ounce of patience my father ever taught me. Because this time, the fraud wasn't on a form. It was standing on my fence line. The next morning, the letter sat on my kitchen table like a rattlesnake I hadn't decided how to kill yet. I made coffee, stared at it for a long time, then finally opened the damn thing again. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to understand what kind of nerve it took to write it. The words were dressed in legal polish. Whoever drafted it knew how to sound official without saying a single true thing. They called me member 3 times. They cited subsection 8C of the Willow Ridge Covenant like it was the Constitution. And then, near the bottom, the line that got me, failure to appear before the Compliance Review Board will result in fines not to exceed $1,000 and potential property encumbrance. Encumbrance. That's a $10 word for theft with paperwork. I folded it up, slid it into a file folder, and wrote one word on the front: evidence. See, I'd spent years catching crooks in suits, the kind that burn down their own warehouses for insurance or misplaced cargo on paper to double-dip the payout. This felt no different, just a new kind of liar wearing community colors. So I went to work. I scanned everything: deed, exclusion clause, boundary map, the original 96 county exemption letter, even the receipt for the taxes I'd paid. I labeled each file, printed duplicates, and stuck them in separate folders. One went in the safe, one stayed on the desk, and one I hid under a loose floorboard, just for old time's sake. If these people wanted to play bureaucratic chicken, I'd meet them bumper to bumper. 2 days later, another envelope showed up. No postmark, hand-delivered again. Inside was a grainy drone photo of my shooting range behind the shed, circled in red. Below it, a note: community members have expressed concern about safety violations and noise levels. I looked at the picture. They'd taken it from high altitude, probably 200 feet up. Illegal without clearance, but who was counting? I stepped outside, scanning the sky. Nothing. Just heat shimmer and a buzzard. Still, I knew what I saw. The hum I'd heard the week before hadn't been my imagination. That night, I drove to town and bought 2 more security cameras and a long-range mic. I mounted one on the gate, one on the porch, and hid the mic inside an old birdhouse pointed at the road. Documentation wasn't paranoia. It was insurance. The next morning, I paid a visit to the Travis County Recorder's office. The clerk, a woman named Brenda with readers hanging from a beaded chain, raised an eyebrow when she saw the folder. "What kind of trouble you in, Mr. Mercer?" "The kind that wears matching polos," I said. She chuckled, then helped me pull every record tied to my parcel number. Lot diagrams, surveys, exemptions, transfers, the works. And there it was, my property outlined cleanly, labeled unincorporated. But something else caught my eye. A second document, dated just 2 months ago, showed a different overlay. A map with Willow Ridge Expansion Zone, western section, stamped across the top. And on that map, my land, shaded beige. "Who filed this?" I asked. Brenda squinted. "Looks like, this signature here, county planner's office, but that stamp?" She leaned closer. "Huh, that's odd. We haven't used that seal since before the archive fire last year." Meaning, if this came through proper channels, it'd have the new seal. That one's dead ink. I smiled, slow, satisfied. That's all I needed. By the time I got home, the sun was bleeding out over the ridge. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and began cross-referencing everything. Sure enough, the same signature appeared on at least 3 recent filings, all tied to Willow Ridge, and the man who signed them? Retired in 20. Forgery. Clean, quiet, confident forgery. I printed every map, circled every inconsistency, and stacked them by the window where the light hit just right. The pile grew. Every page was another nail in their coffin. That night, as I filed the last set of copies, the motion light by the gate flicked on. Headlights flashed once, twice, then disappeared. I stepped out onto the porch, hand resting on the railing. The wind had gone still again, the kind of still that tells you you're not alone. "All right," I said to no one. "You want to see what I'm doing? Go ahead." I pointed to the camera on the eave. "Smile for the record, because if they wanted to fight me on paper, I'd make sure the record showed everything. Every lie, every trespass, every forged seal. Out here, bullets might scare people, but paper's what destroys them." By the end of that week, I'd gathered enough evidence to choke a court clerk. Maps, signatures, county seals that didn't match, printouts of emails from public records, all neatly arranged, labeled, and waiting for the right set of hands. I just needed someone who knew how to swing the hammer the legal way. That's when I called Loretta Cruz. Loretta wasn't just a lawyer, she was a legend in Travis County. Small frame, silver streak in her hair, and eyes that could cut through a tax code faster than a buzzsaw through pine. She used to prosecute elder fraud cases until she realized half the people she was fighting worked for the city. After that, she went private, and the HOAs learned to whisper her name like a curse. When I walked into her office, she didn't offer a handshake, just pointed to the chair across from her and said, "Start talking." So I did. From the first letter to the forged map, from the drone to the so-called compliance summons. She listened without interrupting, her pen scratching across a yellow pad. When I finished, she flipped through my folder, her brow lifting a fraction at the sight of the fake seal. "Well," she said finally, "they stepped in it deep. That's forgery, right? Forgery, fraud, attempted property seizure. Depending on who signed what, we might even be staring at a RICO-level conspiracy." I blinked. "RICO? That's mob territory." She smiled faintly. "You'd be surprised how much organized crime looks like homeowners associations these days." Loretta stood, walked to a filing cabinet, and pulled out a thin, well-worn folder. She tossed it onto the table. "Willow Ridge has been on my radar for a while. Harassment complaints, questionable fines, intimidation tactics, nothing that stuck until now." She tapped the folder in front of me. "What you've got here, this is proof." I exhaled, slow. "So, what's next?" "Next, we play by their rules, but better." She outlined the plan like a general before a battle. Step 1, file a formal request with the county for certified boundary verification, forcing the real surveyor's office to confirm that my parcel was still exempt. Step 2, send a preservation notice to the HOA's attorney, warning them that destruction of any records related to zoning, integration, or annexation would be treated as obstruction of justice. Step 3, build a timeline. Every visit, every letter, every drone photo, every time they crossed my gate. "We don't shout," she said. "We document, because the moment they realize they've been caught, they'll start covering their tracks. And when they do, that's when I strike." Her voice had steel in it, not loud, just certain. She slid my folder back toward me. "You hold on to this like it's gold. Make copies, keep one off-site. And Mr. Mercer, yeah, don't lose your temper. They're hoping you will. HOA boards don't know how to handle calm men. They only know how to weaponize anger." I nodded. "I can do calm." But truth be told, my blood was already simmering. That night, I filed the first set of paperwork with the county clerk, digitally and in person. Loretta emailed me copies of the legal letters she'd drafted, short, sharp, and designed to make any half-honest lawyer break into a sweat. 2 days later, the HOA's reply arrived, a thick envelope with a return address from Hastings and Blythe, attorneys at law. Inside was a cease and desist, accusing me of spreading defamatory statements against community leadership and unlawful surveillance. I laughed out loud. They were trying to flip the script. Classic move. I sent the whole thing to Loretta. Her reply came 5 minutes later. "Perfect. They just admitted surveillance exists. That helps us." The next day, she filed an intent to sue notice for harassment, trespass, and attempted fraudulent annexation. That made it official. From that moment on, it wasn't me versus a clipboard. It was Mercer v. Willow Ridge Community Association. I didn't celebrate. I just went out to the shed, sat on the workbench, and looked at my father's hammer resting in the corner. "Looks like we're building again, old man," I said under my breath. "Just not the way you used to." Out past the tree line, the subdivision lights flickered on one by one, perfect little squares of conformity. And I realized something. They weren't just trying to claim my land. They were trying to erase what it stood for. Independence, work, and the kind of peace you have to earn. But they'd picked the wrong man to test. Because I'd spent years tearing down scams. Now I was about to expose one that thought it could hide behind community bylaws. And the first nail in their coffin was already in the board's inbox. The summons came on a Wednesday. Embossed envelope, thick paper. The kind of letter that tries to feel important before you even open it. Inside, mandatory appearance before the Willow Ridge Civic Compliance Board. Date, Friday 9 a.m. Location, Willow Ridge Community Center, Boardroom A. They'd even bolded mandatory. That was cute. Loretta told me not to go, said it was a trap, an intimidation session dressed up like due process, but I'd spent too many years watching liars hide behind paperwork to let this one play out without me. "I'll be careful," I told her. "Record everything," she said, "and remember, you don't owe them a single word." So I charged my body cam, printed out every document I had, certified deeds, boundary maps, exemption letters, all laminated and tabbed like a courtroom exhibit. Then I loaded the folder into the passenger seat of my truck, next to a thermos of black coffee and a pack of gum I wasn't going to chew. Friday morning, I rolled into Willow Ridge just before 9. The place looked like a postcard for conformity. Manicured lawns, beige stucco homes, rows of cars that all seemed to come from the same lease lot. The community center sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, all fake Tuscan arches and solar panels. Inside, the air was cold, not from the AC, but from the way people looked at me. The receptionist at the front desk gave a tight smile. "Can I help you, sir?" "Mercer," I said, "here for your little compliance party." Her smile twitched. "Boardroom A, down the hall." The door was already ajar. I pushed it open and stepped inside. A dozen people sat around a long table, middle-aged, pastel-colored clothes, the faint smell of perfume and self-importance. At the head of the table sat Kyla Driscoll. I recognized her immediately. Same sharp jawline, same ice blue blouse, same expression that said she was used to winning arguments with tone alone. She looked up from her papers and smiled, all teeth, no warmth. "Mr. Mercer, you weren't on the attendance list?" "I figured that was an oversight," I said, pulling out a chair at the far end and setting down my folder. The room went still. You could feel it, that ripple of discomfort when someone doesn't play by the unspoken rules. One man 2 seats down cleared his throat. "Can we help you with something, sir?" "Yeah," I said. "You can stop pretending this is a real proceeding." That earned me a few blinks, a few nervous coughs. Kyla didn't blink. "Mr. Mercer," she began, voice soft but sharp enough to cut glass, "we're here to discuss your repeated refusal to comply with community regulations. As you've been informed, your parcel has been absorbed into—" "Stop," I said. Then I flipped open the folder and slid a laminated sheet across the table. "That's the original '96 exclusion document, signed by the county registrar. My land was never incorporated into Willow Ridge. Here's the zoning map. My parcel's in white, yours are in beige. And here," I laid down another sheet, "is a letter from the district surveyor verifying my property remains unincorporated and exempt." Silence. One of the board members, a man with a tie too tight for his neck, shifted in his chair. Kyla's eyes flicked to the documents, but she didn't touch them. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "your aggressive tone isn't conducive to a productive dialogue." "What's not conducive?" I shot back. "Is trying to extort private property owners with fake maps and imaginary fines." That stirred the room. An older woman in pearls whispered something to her neighbor. Another board member tried to steer the conversation back to shared community values. I ignored him. Kyla leaned forward. "Let's address your fence and what appears to be a weapons facility on your property." "Let's call them what they are," I said. "A legal privacy fence and a private shooting lane with soundproofing, clear signage, and permits on file. You want a copy?" "You don't understand how this affects children," she snapped, voice rising a notch. "Your property is visible from the walking trail. Children play near your fence. You have cameras everywhere. You built what looks like a gun nest behind your shed. It's threatening." I blinked. "So, now I'm a threat because I'm not beige enough?" A few people gasped. Kyla stood. "That's enough. This is a private meeting. You're trespassing." I leaned back, still calm. "You summoned me, remember?" She turned to the 2 men in black polos standing by the wall. Rent-a-cops, no badges, but they carried themselves like they'd watched too many police shows. "Escort him out, please," she said. They started forward. I raised a hand. "You might want to rethink that." The first one reached for my arm anyway. I shifted my weight, twisted his wrist, and stepped aside. He stumbled, hit the chair, and went down with a dull thud. His partner lunged. I pivoted, caught his shoulder, and let his own momentum carry him face first into the table. Papers scattered like confetti. Gasps. A scream. Someone yelled, "He's attacking them!" I raised both hands, palms out. "Let the record show. I have touched no one in a hostile manner, and I am unarmed. You put hands on me. That's assault." Phones came out. Someone was already dialing 911. I pressed a small button on my keychain. The light on my chest cam blinked red. "By the way," I said, looking straight at Kyla, "you're all on camera, video and audio. You'll be receiving a copy for your records." The second guard groaned, holding his side like he'd been shot. The woman on the phone cried, "He's armed! He's threatening us!" And that's when I felt my stomach drop, because now the cops were coming, and they'd been told I was the shooter. I backed toward the door, hands still up. "I'm calling the police too," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "So they can see the footage from the beginning." Then I walked out, sat down on the curb in front of the community center, sunlight on my back, and waited. When the cruisers pulled in 10 minutes later, lights flashing, dust kicking up, I didn't move, hands visible, camera blinking red. And I had no idea that what came next would be worse than anything inside that boardroom. The cruisers pulled up fast, kicking dust over my boots. 3 of them, 1 county unit, 2 city, lights flashing, tires grinding. I stayed seated on the curb, hands visible, body cam still blinking red. I'd been in enough tense scenes to know the worst thing a man can do is move first. 2 officers got out, hands near their holsters. A third hung back by the car, radio at his shoulder. "Sir, keep your hands where we can see them," one shouted. "They're right here," I said, calm as I could. "I'm the one who called, by the way." The lead officer, mid-30s, short haircut, body armor visible under his vest, approached slow. "You're the one they said was armed?" "I'm not armed," I said. "What I've got is a body cam. Everything that happened in there is recorded." He frowned. "We'll sort that out inside. Stand up, turn around, and place your hands behind your back." I did what he said. No sense arguing with adrenaline. They cuffed me, patted me down, and sat me in the back of the cruiser like I was some lunatic who'd wandered into a church picnic with a chainsaw. Inside the community center, the scene was pure theater. Kyla Driscoll and her little board of actors huddled together, whispering and trembling just enough for the cameras they'd probably already called. One of the rent-a-cops sat in a chair, clutching his ribs like I'd run him through with a pitchfork. The woman who'd called 911 was giving a statement, voice high and shaky. "He stormed in shouting about conspiracies. He had something on his chest. I thought it was a gun." I could hear every word from where I sat. None of it surprised me. What did surprise me was how easily the story took hold. Within 5 minutes, I'd gone from property owner defending his rights to hostile male subject with a possible firearm. When they brought me into the station, it didn't get much better. The booking officer didn't look at me, just read off the charges like he was ordering from a menu. Disturbing the peace, trespassing, intimidation, inciting panic. All the stuff you can't disprove without video. Luckily, that's exactly what I had. They sat me in a small interview room, cinder block walls, flickering fluorescent light, table scarred from years of bad stories. After about 20 minutes, a detective walked in. His name tag read Fisher. He dropped a folder on the table and sat down opposite me. "Mr. Mercer, I'm Detective Fisher. Mind telling me what went on today?" "I already did," I said. "On video." He tilted his head. "We have statements saying you assaulted 2 individuals and made verbal threats." "Yeah," I said. "I bet you do. How about you take a look at the footage before you decide who swung first?" His expression didn't change. "Why were you wearing a camera?" "Because I'm not an idiot." He didn't laugh, just sighed and slid a printed photo across the table. It was a still frame from my own camera, the moment I countered the guard's grab. Caught mid-motion, it looked like I was lunging. "This you?" "Sure is," I said, "and the 40 minutes before that frame will show who started it." He stared at me for a long moment, then said, "You've got a lawyer?" "Working on it." An hour later, Loretta Cruz walked in. She was all calm fire and legal sharpness, heels clicking like punctuation marks. They handed her the footage file. She plugged in her laptop, queued up the video, and hit play. The first few minutes were dull. Me walking in, dropping papers on the table, speaking calmly. Then came the grab, the scuffle, the accusations, and Kyla's voice calling 911. When it finished, Loretta closed the laptop and looked up at Detective Fisher. "Well?" He rubbed his jaw. "She said he was armed." Loretta leaned back, folded her arms. "And you just saw proof that he wasn't. You also saw two unlicensed guards initiate physical contact with a private citizen during an illegitimate meeting. You want to add false reporting and assault to the list, Detective? He sighed. I'll review it with the DA. Loretta turned to me. You're free to go. They uncuffed me an hour later. No apology, no handshake, just a form to sign and a warning. Don't go back there. I walked out into the parking lot, the sun already setting. The air felt thicker somehow, not from heat, but from something meaner. When I got home, I poured a double shot of whiskey and sat at the kitchen table, watching the security feeds on my laptop. The fence, the gate, the driveway, all quiet. Too quiet. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a random spat. The fake map, the drone, the letter, the ambush, it was all part of a bigger play. They wanted the land, and they were willing to lie, forge, and weaponize fear to get it. I opened a new folder on my computer, labeled it Transparency Initiative. Then I uploaded every second of body cam footage, unedited, to a public Google Drive, shared the link with local reporters, HOA watchdog blogs, and a few Reddit threads known for digging up truth like bad weeds. Within 24 hours, the clip hit 10,000 views. By 48, it was viral. Titles like HOA President Calls Cops on Innocent Landowner and Body Cam Footage Exposes False 911 Report started circulating. Kyla's name was out there now, and that, I knew, was going to sting worse than any lawsuit. But I wasn't celebrating, because I knew people like her don't retreat, they regroup. And somewhere across that line of manicured lawns and concrete smiles, someone was already planning the next move. The body cam footage changed everything, and nothing. By the end of the week, half the county had seen it. The other half pretended they hadn't. Local news ran a 90-second segment, HOA president accused of false 911 call. They played 30 seconds of my footage and 30 of Kyla's press statement. She looked right into the camera and said, "We were frightened. We acted responsibly." Every liar sounds calm when they think the truth is too quiet to compete, but it wasn't quiet anymore. The video spread faster than a prairie fire in July. People commented, argued, dissected every frame. Some called me a hero, others said I was a menace. That's how the internet works. It turns justice into a spectator sport. I tried to ignore it, just kept working the land, hammering nails, checking cameras. But peace doesn't come easy once you've embarrassed powerful people. The first sign of trouble came in daylight. I was fixing the gutter when I noticed a pair of folks in neon vests walking the fence line, clipboards, phones out. At first, I figured county assessors, but when I zoomed in with my binoculars, I saw the logo printed across their backs. Willow Ridge Neighborhood Safety Patrol. Cute. They weren't police, they weren't county, just volunteers with an inflated sense of purpose. I stepped off the ladder and walked to the gate. "Morning," I said. The woman smiled, tight and nervous. "We're just doing a community sweep for security purposes." "Security for who?" She hesitated. "For everyone in the area, sir, including you." The man beside her lifted his phone like he was recording me. "You mind if we document the perimeter?" "Yeah," I said. "I mind." They exchanged glances, scribbled something, and walked off, but not before taking one more picture of my gate. By evening, they'd made another pass, then another. Every day, different pairs, all wearing those safety vests, like bright flags of self-importance. They took photos of my truck, noted fence measurements, even peered over the wall using selfie sticks. I started keeping a log, date, time, description, every encounter filed neatly in a folder titled Surveillance. That weekend, Ray dropped by with a six-pack. He leaned on the tailgate and stared at the neon pair walking near the drainage basin. "Looks like you've got fans," he said. "Guess the HOA decided to play soldier." Ray spat into the dirt. "Ain't soldiers if the bullets are clipboards." "Paper bullets," I muttered. He nodded. "Careful, son. Paper's what'll kill you faster than lead in this county." That night, I installed 3 more motion cameras, one in the oak tree by the fence, one near the mailbox, and one angled low to catch plates at the gate. I printed a sign for good measure: Transparency Initiative, live audio and video recording, data archived off-site for public access. The sign did its job. Next morning, I caught one of the patrol guys reading it, lips moving as he parsed every word. Then he looked straight at the camera and flipped it off. By Monday, I had something new in my mailbox. A flyer printed on glossy paper with the same Willow Ridge crest. Neighborhood Safety Patrol, protecting our community from threats. It listed a hotline, a pledge, and a photo of a smiling cartoon family with binoculars. At the bottom, someone had circled in red pen, "We're watching you too." I showed it to Loretta. She raised an eyebrow. "That's intimidation. I'll add it to the list." The list was getting long. Forgery, trespassing, defamation, false reporting, now harassment. But what struck me most wasn't the aggression. It was the organization. They moved like they had orders. Someone was directing this. And then came the memo, an anonymous email. No name, no subject, just 2 words in the body. Heads up. Attached was a scanned document labeled Willow Ridge Civic Committee, Draft Proposal. It was an internal planning memo. No seals, no county signatures, but the language told me everything I needed to know. Land Repurposing Initiative, Western Entrance Beautification Plan. Objective, integrate adjoining unincorporated parcel into community property for aesthetic uniformity and recreational space. Designation, cluster entry lot, West Gate. My parcel number was right there, black ink, no room for interpretation. They weren't harassing me for fun. They were laying groundwork, planning to absorb my land and turn it into the subdivision's new scenic entrance. A parking lot, a flower bed, a sign that would read, "Welcome to Willow Ridge, where community comes first." They wanted my ranch to be the front door to their empire of beige. I stared at the memo until the words blurred. Then I laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how familiar it all felt. I'd spent my life catching crooks who burned their own assets for payouts. Now I was watching a neighborhood do it for pride. That night, I sat on the porch, listening to cicadas and the faint hum of traffic. Somewhere beyond the oaks, a drone buzzed, slow, deliberate, circling once before drifting away. I looked down at the old sheriff's badge I kept in my pocket. It caught the porch light, dull but steady. "All right," I said quietly. "You want a show? Let's give you one." Because if they were going to build their empire on lies, I'd make damn sure the world saw every brick of it. I've never been much for theatrics, but sometimes, when people mistake your silence for weakness, you have to speak a language they'll actually understand. The Willow Ridge Board wanted intimidation? Fine. I'd give them visibility, loud, legal, and impossible to ignore. It started with a phone call to an old friend, Mitch Garrison, former Marine, current president of the Lone Riders Motorcycle Club. Mitch and I go back decades. I helped him once, cleared his name after a crooked adjuster tried to call his garage fire an insurance scam. He never forgot. "Mitch," I said, "you and your boys still ride on weekends?" "Every damn one of them," he said. "Why?" "I've got 2 acres of open space and a community that hates noise." He paused, then laughed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. You bring the grills, I'll bring the brisket." And just like that, Operation Ribeye was born. By Friday afternoon, the first rumble of Harley engines rolled over the ridge like thunder. Chrome and leather glinted in the sun. Flags waved, American, Texas, Pew MIA, and one big yellow banner that said, "Don't tread on me," in letters you could read from the next county. Neighbors peeked from their windows, phones out. By dusk, 20 tents dotted my back pasture. Smokers puffed like steam trains. A makeshift stage went up with an old karaoke rig, and someone wired floodlights to my generator. It was loud, proud, and 100% within the law. Loretta had reviewed every county ordinance ahead of time. Decibel levels, within limits. Fire pits, permitted. Guest event, temporary and registered. Alcohol, BYOB, no sales. We were ironclad. By Saturday morning, the sound of revving engines carried all the way into Willow Ridge proper. You could almost feel the HOA board twitching. Around noon, Kyla Driscoll herself arrived. Pearl earrings, tailored gray suit, clipboard in hand. She stood at my gate like a missionary facing a heathen village. "Mr. Mercer," she said, voice sharp enough to cut tin, "you are in violation of community noise standards." I flipped a burger, handed it to one of the riders, and said, "Community standards don't apply here, remember?" Her nostrils flared. "You are disturbing the entire western sector." I smiled. Didn't know HOA rules applied to sovereign land. This is a residential neighborhood, not a... She waved toward the campers, the motorcycles, the crowd singing Sweet Caroline off-key. A tailgate for degenerates. Right on cue, one of the bikers revved his engine in time with the chorus. Ba, ba, ba. I leaned on the fence. We're under the decibel limit, ma'am. All permits filed, trash in bins, fire pits contained, no alcohol sales. Fully compliant with county ordinances. I handed her a notarized copy, just to watch her face tighten. Good luck shutting us down, I added. We're just Americans enjoying a legal barbecue. Her voice dropped to a hiss. You're mocking this community. No, I said, just reminding it what freedom looks like. She stormed off without another word, muttering something about calling the sheriff. Good. I'd been waiting for that. An hour later, 2 county cruisers rolled up, one of them driven by Sheriff Colton Reeves, a grizzled man who looked like he'd been carved out of oak and baked under the Texas sun. He stepped out, thumbs hooked in his belt. Afternoon, Jack, he said. What's the occasion? Private social event, Sheriff, I said. Temporary gathering, all paperwork in order. You want a burger? He glanced around. The tents, the flags, the laughter, the smokers. Then over at Kyla, who was already mid-speech about illegal disturbance and reckless endangerment. Reeves rubbed his jaw. You serving booze? No sales, just personal use. He nodded. Any firearms out? All locked in the shed. Range closed. He grunted. Technically legal, he said, turning back to Kyla. Just real annoying. I smiled. That's the spirit. He chuckled, tipped his hat, and told her, Nothing I can do, ma'am. Kyla's face went pale, the kind of pale that looks like a storm holding itself back. She spun on her heel and marched off. By sunset, someone had posted a video of her confrontation online. The caption read, HOA president tries to shut down legal BBQ, gets schooled by sheriff. The soundtrack? Another one bites the dust. By Sunday morning, it had 1 million views. But I didn't throw a party for the attention. This wasn't about humiliation, it was about exposure, because people don't believe abuse until they see it with their own eyes. That night, I sat by the fire pit while the riders swapped stories and guitars passed around like peace pipes. For the first time in weeks, the place felt alive. Not like a target, but a home. When the last of the engines faded into the distance Sunday night, I stood by the gate watching dust settle over the road. Quiet again, just how I liked it, except for the envelope taped to the gatepost. White, crisp, expensive paper. Inside, a letterhead from Hastings and Blythe, attorneys at law. Cease and desist notice. You are hereby ordered to immediately discontinue distribution of defamatory statements, unauthorized release of internal community documents, and unlawful harassment of Willow Ridge board members. Failure to comply will result in immediate legal action. At the bottom, in neat blue ink, CC, Kyla Driscoll, President, Willow Ridge Community Association. I folded the letter and slipped it in my pocket. The fire behind me crackled, sparks flying up into the night sky. They still didn't get it. This wasn't about noise. It wasn't about fences or maps or dues. It was about control and what happens when they lose it. And from the look of things, they were about to lose a lot more. Because Loretta had just texted me one line. We've got them. Call me first thing in the morning. Loretta didn't waste words over the phone. When I called her the next morning, she answered on the first ring and said, Bring everything you've got to my office. We're about to make history. By the time I got there, she already had a war room set up. Papers spread across her desk, color-coded tabs, county database printouts, and a mug that said, Don't talk file. She looked up from her computer, eyes bright behind her glasses. Remember that forged map? She said. Hard to forget. Well, she said, pointing to a stack of documents, I found 3 more like it. And they all have the same signature. A man who retired in 20s. The stamp they used was decommissioned after the records room fire. They must have copied it before it got destroyed. My stomach tightened. Who filed them? She smiled without humor. A shell company called Westfield Surface Prep, LLC. Care to guess who owns it? I didn't need to. Kyla, I said. Kyla's husband, technically, Loretta replied. But she's listed as the company's community liaison. It's a front, Jack. The HOA board's been funneling association money into private development schemes. Your land was supposed to be their next project, a fake beautification initiative to bump property values and win a county grant. She handed me a file, invoices, emails, meeting notes. One memo read, Phase 1, Secure Annexation via Integration Clause, Mercer Parcel Ideal Anchor Location. I let out a low whistle. They weren't just trying to find me, they were trying to steal my land wholesale. Exactly, Loretta said. And this, she tapped the file, is felony territory. We spent the next 2 hours cross-referencing timestamps and signatures. Every forged document pointed to the same digital trail, an HOA computer, a single user ID, and a timestamp that placed Kyla in the system after hours. Loretta's grin widened. We've got motive, method, and money trail, the trifecta. She called her contact at the district attorney's office, a man named Kevin Adair, whom she'd worked with years ago on a fraud case. He agreed to meet us that afternoon. The DA's office sat downtown, brick building, no nonsense. Adair was mid-50s, barrel-chested, with that tired look prosecutors get from spending too long watching good people get buried in bad paper. Loretta laid out the evidence like a magician revealing the final card. When we finished, he leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen on his desk. This is solid, he said. Forged seals, fraudulent filings, misappropriation of HOA funds. It's a full-blown criminal enterprise. You sure you want to take this public, Mr. Mercer? It's going to get ugly. I nodded. It's already ugly. I just want it honest. He smiled. Fair enough. We'll open a formal investigation. But I need one thing from you. Don't engage with them again. No confrontations. Let us do it clean. I promised I would, and for once, I meant it. That evening, Loretta filed the preliminary civil suit while Adair's team began drafting the criminal warrants. By the next morning, subpoenas were out, not just for Kyla, but for the entire board. The reaction was instant. I woke up to 20 missed calls, 3 voicemails from HOA members, and 1 very loud knock on my gate. It was Ray. He waved a newspaper at me. You seen this? Front page. Forgery allegations, Rock Willow Ridge HOA. Below that, a photo of Kyla, looking like someone had just told her the empire she built was made of wet cardboard. The article quoted anonymous sources, confirming a county investigation into zoning fraud and falsified annexation filings. Public opinion flipped overnight. The same residents who once clutched their pearls at my non-conforming fence were now demanding refunds, audits, resignations. The HOA board held an emergency meeting that night. It didn't go well. According to a live stream one resident secretly filmed, Kyla tried to claim she was being framed. Her husband shouted about misunderstandings. Then a man at the back, a contractor who had built the subdivision's retaining walls, stood up and waved an invoice. "This your signature?" he yelled. "Because I've been waiting 6 months for payment." The room exploded. Loretta called me the next morning. "They're eating each other alive," she said. The DA's office has issued 3 search warrants. One for the HOA office, one for Kyla's home, and one for her husband's company. Anything else? I asked. She hesitated. Yeah, the guards, the rent-a-cops who jumped you. One of them flipped. He's testifying that Kyla told them to provoke you on camera so they could file a restraining order. I let out a long breath. That's poetic. Later that week, news crews camped outside Willow Ridge's gated entrance. Cameras, microphones, satellite vans, the full circus. They filmed boxes of records being carried out by deputies, neighbors shouting over fences, a "for sale" sign already planted on Kyla's immaculate lawn. I didn't go down there, didn't need to. The truth was finally doing the heavy lifting. Instead, I spent that afternoon on my porch, watching the wind push through the pecan trees I'd planted that spring. It was quiet again. Not the uneasy kind, but the earned kind. Loretta stopped by with a bottle of champagne. "The county's filing formal charges," she said. "Forgery, conspiracy, obstruction, and misappropriation of funds. The board's dissolved pending investigation. You, my friend, are officially in the clear." I poured 2 glasses. "To paperwork," I said. She laughed. "To proof." The sun dipped low, painting the horizon gold. For the first time in months, I let myself believe it might really be over. But deep down, I knew people like Kyla don't go quietly. And when pride falls apart, it doesn't land soft. By the time the arrests happened, the story had already gone national. News trucks camped outside the Willow Ridge sign. Drone footage showed deputies hauling boxes of files out of the HOA office, while neighbors watched from their perfect porches, clutching coffee mugs that said love, laugh, love. Kyla Driscoll was led out in handcuffs, wearing a silk robe and sunglasses too big for her face. The cameras loved it. Local stations looped the footage for days. HOA president arrested in forgery and fraud investigation. Her husband got picked up the same afternoon for falsifying business records. 2 other board members followed by evening, their mugshots lined up neatly beneath hers on the 6 o'clock broadcast, like a suburban rogues gallery. The DA's press conference was short and merciless. Kevin Adair stood at the podium, Loretta beside him, and laid it out plain. Forged maps, stolen funds, intimidation of homeowners, conspiracy to defraud the county. Reporters threw questions, flashes popped, and every answer painted the same picture, that Willow Ridge had stopped being a neighborhood years ago and turned into a racket. By the next morning, the county court issued an emergency order, Willow Ridge Community Association, dissolved. Just like that, the empire of beige was gone. I drove past the subdivision that afternoon. The fancy entry sign, the one they had planned to rebuild on my land, was draped in yellow tape. A notice from the county zoning board hung over it. Property under investigation. Residents were out in the street, talking in clusters, some angry, some relieved. A few even waved as I passed. For the first time in months, nobody called me a problem. Back home, I parked by the gate and looked at the new sign I'd welded to the fence that morning. Private land, no HOA jurisdiction. Cross this line and face consequences. Simple, honest, the way it should have been from the start. Loretta showed up later with a sealed envelope. "The settlement's final," she said. "Judge signed off this morning. Inside was a check for $70,000. Damages, restitution, legal fees." I stared at it for a long time before setting it on the table. "Hell of a number," I said. She grinned. "Hell of a fight." We toasted with coffee, not champagne. Neither of us liked celebrating other people's ruin, even when they earned it. When she left, I walked out to the edge of the property where the fence met the tree line. The air smelled like rain and cut grass, the kind of smell that says the storm's past, at least for now. I rested my hand on the steel post, warm from the sun, and thought about my father, about the hammer, the badge, the land. He never got to see it like this, but maybe he'd have smiled knowing it was still ours. The pecan trees rustled. Somewhere in the distance, a lone engine backfired and faded. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel surrounded. I felt home. And as the sun slid behind the ridge, turning the sky the color of worn copper, I realized something simple. They came for control. They left in cuffs. And all it took to stop them was one man who still believed a deed, a fence, and the truth were worth defending. Summer came early that year. By May, the fields had turned the color of brass, and the air carried that faint electric smell that always comes before rain. The kind of weather my father used to call rebuilding weather. Most of Willow Ridge still sat quiet, half the homes for sale, the rest stripped of their HOA logos like they were trying to wash off a stain. The county auctioned off what was left of the association's assets, printers, file cabinets, even Kyla's framed Community Leadership Award. I heard it sold for $12. I didn't go to the auction, didn't need to. The fight was over, and I'd already won what mattered. Out here, the noise faded fast once you stopped feeding it. The new neighbors, folks who had quietly hated the HOA all along, started stopping by. One woman brought peach cobbler. A young couple asked about soil tests for a vegetable garden. Even the kids waved now when they biked past my fence. Ray called it peace through paperwork. He wasn't wrong. I fixed up the old barn next. New roof, fresh red paint, a motion light over the door. Inside, I hung my father's hammer above the workbench. Handle cracked, initials still carved deep. Below it, nailed to the wall, I mounted the old sheriff's badge I'd found buried out back. 2 generations of Mercers, side by side, tools of work and tools of law, both meaning the same thing: stand your ground. One evening, as the sun dropped behind the ridge, I walked to the fence line with a welding torch in hand, sealing the last joint on the steel plate I'd added to the gate. When the weld cooled, I stepped back to look at what I'd built. Not a fortress, not a monument, Just a clean, simple line between what was mine and what wasn't. Loretta came by a few days later. She'd swapped her suit for jeans and boots. Said she was trying out retirement. We sat on the porch, sipping sweet tea, watching fireflies blink in the dusk. "You ever think about selling?" she asked. "Not a chance," I said. "Took me half a lifetime to buy it back. Might as well die here," she smiled. "You'll have offers, you know. Folks love a story like this. The man who beat the HOA. They'll want to turn it into a book or a movie," I chuckled. "Then they'll miss the point." "What's the point, Jack?" I thought about it a long moment before answering. "That land isn't valuable because I won it. It's valuable because I worked for it, because my old man bled for it, because it's ours." She nodded, quiet. "Good answer." The crickets started up, a steady pulse under the wind. The stars came out one by one. Later, after she left, I sat out there alone. No spotlights, no reporters, no fences being measured by strangers in vests. Just me, the hum of the night, and the faint outline of the sign on my gate glowing under the moonlight. No HOA, private land, respect the line. I smiled to myself. For months, I'd been fighting to prove this place belonged to me. Now it just felt like it always had. Maybe that's what freedom really is. Not the noise you make when you win, but the silence that follows when you don't have to fight anymore. And as the wind rustled through the pecan trees, I realized something simple and true. I didn't just reclaim a ranch. I reclaimed my peace. And for the first time in a long, hard while, the quiet felt earned.